Hey everyone, my name is Sean Cotter. I'm the executive director for Wicked Queer, Boston's LGBTQ plus film festival. And I'm here with Alberto Fuguet, who is the director of Everything at Once, the gaze of Paco and Manello. So happy to have you here. I absolutely love your film. It's a world premiere. So we are the
World
first ones on
Universal
the block to have
premiere.
it, have your super lovely documentary. Um, Tell me a little bit about yourself and sort of how you got involved with the project.
No, thank you so much. And it's the first time I'm going to talk about it. Your Boston will be the first place where it's beginning to screen. So we didn't know if we should wait for the pandemic to end, but who knows? So and like everybody, you see movies also on. You have to begin to trust the screen, no, or cherish it, or even give it a new what would be the word? Legitimate, make it more legit. I mean, because everybody's seen great movies and bad movies and everything on the screens also. I mean, of course, I would like to be with you now in Boston and we would have had a great party and
For
at the
sure.
screening, but this is a for the next big thing. So we're opening it, yes. And I'm a film buff, I guess. I'm from Chile. Um, I used to be a critic. I always wanted to make movies, but I thought that was impossible. I ended up being, for some time, I studied journalism. I I was a film critic, and but eventually I turned into a writer, a novelist. Uh, Not some of my books, not the books that perhaps I like. No. I mean, I like them all, but um, some of my books have been in English, not too much, not the newer ones. Um, I have like a really gay novel which has not been translated. And at certain time, I said I'm gonna have to try to make movies, and I began to make movies. So this is, I don't know, like my eighth or seventh movie. I forgot. But I began to understand also that you could do it much more cheaper and sort of what we call guerrilla. And this is Todo a la vez, or Everything at Once, is I think it closes a trilogy, which my producer and friend Arturo calls it the La Trilogía de la Carne, would be called the, in English, it's meat would be too crude, the word, I think, but it would be
Flash.
the flesh, the flesh trilogy, huh? Or the skin trilogy, or the full frontal, huh?
Yeah.
And basically, I decided to make not only gay movies, but movies regarding flesh and skin and bodies and male bodies, and treat them like many, for centuries, women have been treated,
Mhm.
uh, with desire, with beautifulness, with and explore different themes. And so I did like a giallo, how you say, like a
Yellow.
terror movie,
Yeah.
um, called Cola de Mono. And then we did sort of a soft porn story in Mexico. And this is, and also it's strange because it turned into an international trilogy. And now everything closes, I think, very well with Everything at Once, which is about, well, you know what it's about. We can talk it. But I thought it was perfect because it was about two guys who basically their the profession, they abandoned everything to pursue their hobby, their lust, their fantasies, and turn it into an art, and not only into an art, a way of life, and to a fanzine, you would call it. I think it's an elegant fanzine, but a fanzine which is very well done and very well printed and very well
It's always gorgeous.
and gorgeous. And it's a magazine that everybody doesn't throw away because it's sort of, you collect it. No, you can't bear, you save it. So I like that. So it's a collectible. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No, completely. So yeah, I personally, like, I was really excited when this film was presented to us because I had actually heard of Paco and Manolo
Good, good.
through like my own sort of appreciation of erotic photography.
Mhm.
But magazine was very influential. Also, like my Tumblr account, Mr. Faggot to you if anybody wants to follow me, uh, is filled with sort of images of erotic photography, and I really
Mhm.
loved their sort of sensibility and
Mhm.
their sort of gaze. Um,
Yeah, for me, I love that word that we don't have it in Spanish. I mean, we have mirada, which is just look or
yeah,
watch, but gaze, and also it's funny that it seems so gay, the
yeah,
word
yeah.
gaze. I mean, sometimes I didn't understand, because, huh?
Well, we kind
So
of talk, I
here,
mean, we talk about gays all the time, like in when we think about film, like who, because
yeah,
especially as a filmmaker, what is their gaze? What are they looking at? Male gaze is always talked about in the culture, but I think the concept of female
yes,
gaze
yes,
is
yes.
sort of like coming up as well when we have
I
women
think it's a
directors.
it's a it's a theme that it's beginning to be talked about, and also I think there's a new re-evaluation, something, the
Mhm.
way also films that were maybe not gay or maybe hiddenly gay because of the photographer or the director who was in the closet, but 70s, 60s movies who now you say, look at the way this guy is portrayed. This
Yep.
makes, I mean, like I always say, Gallipoli is my favorite gay movie of all times.
Oh, yeah, Deliverance. Yes.
No, no, Gallipoli.
Oh, yes, Gallipoli. Oh, yes.
Yes,
No,
don't you
I
think?
would agree with. I completely would agree with that. So,
But now some people will say, no, we can't show it or we can't distribute it because it's not really a gay movie. It's what does really gay mean? And I think the gays is very important.
yeah, I agree. I agree. Like even like something like as old as like something like Nosferatu, um,
Uh-huh.
because Murnau was a closeted gay man and like
Mhm.
director. His sort of gay sort of look and his sort of regarding of
And
the subject.
his the way, yes, and well, and of course James Whale, I mean Frankenstein, and
Right.
also even the themes, it's like the guy who feels different, who needs somebody to have a mate or all that.
So, like in mentioning sort of the gays in the title, and also sort of how it was is sort of discussed in the film. How would you say that your gaze sort of like kind of complemented the gaze of of Paco and Manelo?
Mhm.
Um, how do you think that sort of?
Ah,
'Cause-
good question. I don't know. Let me see. The first thing is I didn't want to get too much in the way. So, well, then we can talk about them. But basically, they're from Barcelona, and one of the things I also wanted is to see if sometimes the power of movie of a narrative can. Sometimes I don't know if it happens to you. Is why some movies or some books or some novels are so famous, but the good ones or the good photographers or the stuff you like don't really get to more people. So I'm very happy that Sean, you selected this movie because I think not because they speak Spanish. The book, their fanzine is almost no, it doesn't have too much writing, and the writing also is in two languages because it's translated. So I
Mhm.
think perfectly there's things that are totally universal, and I think uh, well, I think what as they say, first of all, everybody is a voyeur. I think you have to not to try to be bashful about that. You could be a good voyeur. You could be in the open and film and take pictures or do it, more like a peeping tom. But uh, in this movie, I really felt very close to them. I think I like the type of guys they select,
Mhm.
which is not really they select, but at the end, people begin to know. They always say, "Why don't you have older people or with different type of bodies?" A lot of people are not don't write to us because they feel that they cannot be portrayed. But actually, they take photograph of anybody who wants to be taken pictures. But because they're in the Mediterranean, it ends up being very Mediterranean. And
This is good to know because I'm going to look them up.
yes, and basically the I wanted to choose people. I wanted to choose like at a bar where we were talking, say, hey, that guy could be perfect for the movie. He said, no, no, no. They have to write us. If
Right.
they don't, we're not going to go up, and say, hey, Sean, would you like to? If Sean wants to write us, be my guest. And then, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why many foreigners say, I'm going to pass by Barcelona and maybe we can do a shoot. And then in this movie, it was not to try to get in the way. And so watching the pictures and talking to them before, because I went to seduce them first, because they were very, very divos and said, okay, we've seen some of your movies, we like them, but let's talk. And there was no, I mean, I guess there was Zoom in those days, and like 2 years ago. but they wanted to speak in real life, like
Hmm.
having tapas and wine, doing the Spanish thing.
Yep.
And they are very good at talking and having eye to eye contact. And so we went to Barcelona and to try to convince them, and we did. And then I learned how they did more. I had tons of questions, like like the first one is, where do you get the models and everything? And once I understood, I said, okay, this movie we have to follow them and not be intrusive, so they can do the thing. We have to show, definitely we can't make a movie without showing how they take pictures,
Mm.
because it wouldn't be the same. Just
Right.
showing their pictures would not be. It's like doing a movie about a painter, not be permitted to go to the studio.
Right. Right.
And then, since they work with natural light and with very little, nothing extra, we said, let's do the movie the same way. So we didn't even have sound. I mean, we did have sound, but we decided with my cameraman Patricio, he would make the camera and the sound. So basically, we would not be, not all these people. So those sessions would be very like the real sessions. So they wouldn't be more nervous because of us.
Well, I mean, that's good, and you can kind of tell that sort of intimacy around it. And I was really kind of curious about like what it was actually to be on the set of filming it, because they seem like, again, their sort of like love of natural light and that sort of
Mhm.
like always comes through in their in their photography.
Yes.
And I like that the sort of the look of the documentary sort of has that same sort of vibe to it. And I also really like
Yeah, because we
the
couldn't be glossy. I mean, we
yeah,
couldn't go change from, Vanity Fair to what they do. Huh? And also, I believe in that sensibility, and I believe in natural light and more a European thing, and so yes, and of course, there everybody has this not only voyeur, but of course, one of the things is I want to see how they do it. It's like it's part of your lust or your morbo, we call it in Spanish. So
yeah.
I think I want to give to the public also, not only talk to them, not only see their work or their ideas, but also go directly to the sessions. So be also like a voyeur, be part of the experience.
Yeah, I mean, and they're such a fascinating sort of couple as well. I mean,
Very intelligent and very cultured.
yeah, and they have such a like sort of like a unspoken language, but they also speak a lot. And one of the things that was really kind of amazing is that you can tell that they've been together for so long because they kind of
Yes, from
talk
18
over
or
each other a little
19.
bit.
Yes.
Um, but
And also one of the things I was amazed, and I think not all, very few people in the world of cinema or in, I don't know, uh, movies or photography, they really are a couple in the sense that they only use one camera. I mean, they have different camera, but they both begin to take pictures, and so they don't really know which picture was taken by who. They
mm,
share the camera, and one is doing something else, but it's not like, okay, these were done by Sean, these were done by Alberto, so they
yep.
really trust each other and work together. Then it's not like, the best pictures were Paco's, or the best ones, or the worst ones were Manolo's.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things that I like really kind of appreciated too, is that was shown as that sort of the passing of the cameras and stuff
Mhm.
like that, and also in your sort of construction of the documentary too, there is a lot of different sort of like use like looks like either 16 or Super 8 millimeter
Mhm.
sort of moments in it too that kind of mirrored their sort of use of like Polaroid and like
Mhm.
different formats of sort of
Yeah,
photography.
well, I've worked a lot now with my editor, and we did a strange documentary, very regarding cinema, where it's one of my favorite gay movies, um, which is not a gay movie, but it's talking about gays and beautiful men and things. Is a film called Rusty James. I mean, it's called wow, well, it's called Rumblefish, and
Oh,
in Europe
Rumblefish.
it's called Rusty James, and here it's called the Law of the Streets,
Oh,
and
wow.
uh, and I made this movie called Locations, Searching for Rusty James, and so it was sort of a collage. So I went to Tulsa, and we made this documentary, a personal essay, with all types of scraps and collages to celebrate this movie called Rumblefish, and now it's part of the Criterion Collection. and of that movie. So when we said this movie has to have different textures and sensibility, and also they have taken pictures before digital, so they had taken pictures on Polaroid before on film, and they also film a little. So they gave us snippets of stuff. They have a little camera that shoots for like 2 minutes, or they used to have. So I'm quite happy. I think it's a very elegant movie and a very. I think it's a film for the whole family. I think it's. This is where people now going to have to decide how open they are,
Mm.
because if this was about a photographer who did famous models, women models, I think it would be less scary for some people. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, because I often think that male sexuality, or the sexuality between men, is often it's so taboo and
Mhm.
so frightening for a lot of people that this topic would kind of get shooed away as like not being family friendly. But you made a beautiful film that
Yeah, I
is
think it's
it's
about a
not
paint. I mean, it
and
could be,
it's like
and the
for
Italians did it in the Renaissance. I mean,
right.
their pictures look a lot like Caravaggio, Da Vinci.
Hmm.
And if you sell to Showtime, let's do a film about Caravaggio, everybody would say, let's go for it. You know, it's hard. But yeah, but when you see something new and real bodies, people get scared.
Yeah, I mean, and you did a really great job of sort of connecting that from the beginning to the sort of the epilogue of
Mhm,
the film with the sort of the statue, the sort of the
mhm.
classical statues and stuff like that, sort of tying that all in. It really kind of like nice job of sort
Yeah,
of
and I think they're pioneers also because they began to show us when they began to take pictures. They, of course, they took fashion pictures
mhm.
and pictures with people with clothes. And if you see those pictures, they show it. They're almost the same pictures as the ones they take now. So they began little by little to strip them, huh? Or to choose things. Like they had something that doesn't appear in the documentaries, like it was a jeans, something for jeans, but they asked the model to change underwear and to have crummy underwear because they thought that would look better, in their aesthetic. And also, I think one of the things I learned a lot from them is they tell stories. I think, they take pictures, but they also the magazine and all their how you say overall herb or all their accumulation
Mhm.
um, tells a story, tells a way of life, a bucolic way of life, a different sort of, and in a way, pretty innocent, because sex doesn't have to be even raunchy sex or weird or whatever, doesn't have to be considered, so taboo. I think it's very even the more harsher quote unquote. There's always seems like these. They're like people who are curious. They're or that they're cruising or they want to be nude near the water or under a bridge or something. It's all done in. I don't know. I think it's amazing, and I'm very happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's you can get their sort of like appreciation of sort of like just the male form, and what I also found was really interesting too is that because their magazine is called Kink, which has this
Mhm.
sort of like connotation in English about fetish
Correct.
and sort of like more subversive sexuality,
Hmm.
they were sort of thinking about it as more of a sort of an aesthetic,
Hmm.
and less of sort of like a sexuality, but more in a sort of like how are they looking, what are they
Hmm.
looking at, that kind of thing. Um, and I mean, I also really like the exploration that you kind of go into too about with the models and sort of
Hmm.
and also with them on what they're looking for in models and how sort of the shoot kind of unfolds. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, at first one says I would never. One also begins to talk about oneself or the people one knows, and says like all these models are very beautiful in
Hmm.
their every different way, but they must be crazy. I mean, why do they do it? Or and also it's for free, and also it's not for an ad campaign. It's not porn. Why do they do it? And the question and the answers were very very surprising for me. And all of them at the end sort of had the same line. Most of them was to see if they could do it and not be shy.
Hmm.
Which one would say, "Dude, don't be shy. I mean, you're a god." Then it's like another question. Maybe young people have that. A lot of them have the idea of time present,
Hmm.
and I think Paco works a lot with Paco Merlo with sort of a memory, so almost. The photos, you never know when they were taken. They're not really very up to date, you know. Even
Yeah,
though maybe they took them last week, but you don't really know if it's, because they're without clothes. You don't really know. Also, if it's the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so a lot of the answers I found fascinating was, I want to do it because maybe I want a memory for the future.
mm,
I want to show people, look, this is the way I was when I was 24 or 30, 30 years ago, uh, and uh, and also I did it. I'm still here, as the song says. Uh, and but but everybody felt a little shy, and everybody felt nervous, and everybody felt that their body was not, which I think is amazing, the sense that how also in men the idea of body shame
mm,
is like, people who actually could be the cover or could get a contract for Calvin Klein, no?
right.
They were very shy to, I'm a little fat, I have too
Yeah.
much tummy, I'm too hairy, sorry. It's like,
Well, I think a lot of times that in society, those kind of issues in men aren't really like hear a lot about it with women
yes,
because there is, I mean, and women get it hard because of
yes, and
all
it
the
was
sort of
for
imagery.
thousands of years.
Yep, and then I mean, and the same really happens with men a lot as well. But you're not allowed, due to
to
codes of
to complain.
masculinity, to sort of like talk about that. And
Yeah, there's one, I think Elliot says that, yeah, that sometimes when he wants to hook up with a guy at a party, he thinks, well, wow, I'm gonna have to take off my clothes, and maybe he's gonna think I'm not well built enough, or that.
he's beautiful.
So I
So
also felt it was also very important for them to talk to, and almost everybody said it was much more harder to talk with me than with them, because to be naked, also, what does naked mean, Sean?
right,
So in the case, Elliot was strangling how you say,
the pillow, yeah.
a pillow, because he felt it's like, stop, poor pillow, and because he felt very shy and very naked because I was talking with him, and
Mm.
even though he was with clothes on. So that's also, what does naked mean? And I don't know if we're going to talk about the surprise, but the movie changed because of things that happened in the world, and now I also think naked has much more new meanings also.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely talk about that too,
Okay,
because
or later.
yeah, we can talk a little bit later about that. One of the other
So you
things that
enjoy.
really,
So you also. So I'm glad you connected with. I thought it was important for them for the guy to talk, and everybody had a story to tell.
and I think that's really refreshing to hear as a man, as another man, because I know I struggle myself with those sort of issues too. Because
Mhm.
I'm too hairy, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too this. And in certain circles, people think that I'm like, it's like I have a sort of presence that I don't necessarily see. And I'm sure that Elliot has the same sort of thing. It's like, you're always your worst judge. Uh,
Uh-huh.
and I think that sometimes that we're always comparing ourselves to others,
Right.
and
Richard
that's
Gere
always,
or whatever. Yes. Yes.
yeah, exactly, or whoever it is.
Yes.
um and it's sometimes it's hard to sort of like get out of your head with that too. So I'm not surprised that the models were a little bit shyer with you. But also, like, it's kind of a weird situation to be in too, to be sort of that
Mhm.
vulnerable as well. uh
Well, and that's it. One of the things. Well, I also, it's amazing because one knows a lot. I mean, I've been around the block, I guess, but you've never been around all the blocks. So I learned a lot of stuff, and like, I had never done that type of photography. Uh, um, the first movies, when I asked people to be naked, of course I was timid, but I began to learn that it was true. The ones who's more naked in a way is Paco Manolo, and they say that in the movie. They are also exposing themselves. They're exposing what they like, what they don't like. So that is also, and also we were talking about. I said, well, since we do this, let's do it and let's talk about everything. So there's a part in the movie where we talk about body parts, and they know all the answers because they really have experience, and
mhm.
not in a porn way. It's not
Right,
like the biggest dick wins,
right.
and some of their answers are amazing. But one of them is that, I asked them if it was important if somebody came,
Hmm.
ejaculated
Yep.
in a shoot, and they said it's not necessary. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it don't.
Hmm.
But when it happens, it's good. And I said, why is it good? And I thought it was because for another reason. I thought it because, well, because you see it, because it's hot, because
Right.
I don't know, it's part of like the ending. And they said, well, really, the real reason is because something happens with the face, something happens with the body, with the vulnerability, with the nakedness. There's a new type of nakedness, and if a model comes, he turns into a better, in a way, into a much more better model, because now he's not really. And one of the things I'm very happy because we have a come scene.
Hmm.
I can say that, no?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Okay. And
We're among friends. You can talk about anything.
okay, we're just together,
Yeah, we're just
and
just us.
but we tried to do with Sebastian to edit it almost like a thriller.
Yep.
Like we don't really know if he's, because in porn you always know they're going to come. So we wanted to say
Right.
maybe he won't. And since it's the only one we show and we only one we had present, because I'm sure we scared a little, the
Yeah.
mall, because it's not the same to be with two people than with five. We were
Right,
three
right.
or four.
Of course.
And but in the case of Elliot, he comes and it's true. The pictures and the way his body language changes, and so it's weird. People get very scared of these things, but in the way they turn into, I don't know if the correct word is angels, but they turn very innocent. It's like sex isn't necessarily, there's so much things that are in the head of the people.
Yeah, and the thing
Because
is,
in porn,
yeah,
the cum shot is really the nasty part.
what's the money shot? It's the money
It's
shot.
the money shot. It's the ending. It's a bad ending usually.
Right.
They don't know how to continue the movie if there's quote unquote you call that a movie.
Right.
So I thought it was interesting that sort of a new chapter opens, and that of course one of that is a much more vulnerable now.
Yeah, and I have to agree. Like the sort of the way that scene is sort of like, because you talk about it throughout the film, and it kind of leads up to sort of that, like, because it's the sort of topic is sort of like danced around, and we talk about like sort of the how the sort of the shoot goes, whereas the model will undress, but as soon as the underwear comes off, it's a different shoot. But then
Right.
also if the model ejaculates, it's a different shoot too, and the sort of their presence, they become more present and more calm. I
More
think
calm.
how it was described, and you
It's
portray
like
that
they
very
say
well.
the calm after the storm in a way,
Yeah, 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 exactly. And I
or
know
the
that,
light after there's no better light after a rain, no?
yeah, and I know that for myself, I've actually posed for photos like
Paco
that.
y Manolo, no.
No, I wish that
Okay,
they're on my
well, I
list.
mean, if they were in Boston, we already would have had
I would
I'm
have
gonna
I would
ask
have I
them.
would have written them already.
We have to
Um,
write them now on Instagram. So anybody who's looking at us can go through Paco and Manolo Instagram or the Kink official Instagram
yep.
and say I'm interested in your work and I would love to pose and let's see. They haven't really traveled too much abroad, so they've been to Berlin, to
Mhm.
France, to Italy, but they haven't crossed to South America or to North America. So I'm sure they're. This is just the beginning. Don't you?
Right.
Don't you agree? I
Yeah,
think they're
no,
going to
I think so too.
cherished.
And I really think that, like,
I
even
think Tashin should talk to them soon.
I agree. I completely agree. Tashin, get on it.
Yeah,
Tashin,
yeah.
you're
I mean,
watching.
don't
Get on.
don't be yeah, yeah. Don't be how you say flojo.
Right.
Don't be too confident on your already triumphs.
Right.
You also have to look somewhere new places.
No, and the thing is, like, what you've also shown in your documentary is their sort of evolution as well as
Mhm.
artists and photographers. And one of the things I really kind of appreciated too is their sort of your kind of talk. There was a mention of like gleaning, and
Mhm.
how they sort of like kind of find locations and also
Mhm.
models with this sort of like gleaning aspect. Do you maybe want to expand a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, this is also the idea that if your culture, that if you like to listen to good music, to see European films or art films, or you have a in Spain, you're subscribed to filming, or in the US to Criterion Collection,
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're a nerd or you can't have desire. So
Right.
here it's a mix. I think probably a lot of people who are watching us have both worlds. I mean, they can watch porn or go to a club or whatever, no, and also appreciate a book, appreciate a European movie or whatever.
Mhm.
So I think also that's very important is that people are not so much compartmentalized. Like now I'm gonna go get naked and all my world is all the books I've read, are gonna go away and I'm just gonna turn into a piece of
Right.
meat. So them, they are very, very cinephiles. So they really appreciate Agnes Varda. They they're fans of Pasolini. They began to understand that not all guys have to look like Alain Delon
Right.
to be handsome. That there's this Mediterranean look in some photographers and some painters, and um, and they don't really believe in the studio system. So they gather, they go walking around. They say that one of the films that most impressed them in their life is Wild Reeds by André Téchiné,
Oh
uh,
yes.
which is very Paco and Manolo, no?
Yeah, yeah. No,
And
really.
it's a beautiful film, which probably doesn't have too much nudity, right? But
No, I think the last time I haven't seen it in a really long time, but I don't think that there's a lot of nudity.
but uh, but what carves into your the desire, the gaze, and all you very, especially if you see it young, you're like, I can't. This is the world I want to live in.
Right. And they have really created this sort of like pastoral kind of like,
Pastoral, yes.
and even in the interiors of like apartments, there still is this sort of like the aesthetic that they have established really kind of carries through too. So
Well, one of the things Paco says in one of the magazines, he says, everybody think that we go into the houses looking for if they people have lube or porn or VHS or how much or the idea before somebody takes off their clothes if they're going to have a really strong abs or muscles or whatever. We really look at the thing they have in their home. That really gives it more, turns us on. So what books they have, or if they do have books or not. And yeah, and in a way, they turn all these houses or rooms into sets.
mm,
And even though they're very different, some are very elegant, some are very basic. At the end, their eyes can, which I think an author or a filmmaker should always turn anything into their world. You understand?
yeah, yeah. I mean the
Like if you
French,
go to Paris, you turn Paris into your sensibility,
right. It's
even if you're
like,
just shooting the Eiffel Tower.
yeah, I think
I
the
mean, if
French
you're
have,
good, if you're bad, you're going to be like a bad tourist.
right. The
So
French
I
have,
love the parts of the guys in a way the almost all the shoots are by guys alone.
mhm,
So they also explore in a way, even though maybe there's somebody in the other room, but you really feel there's idea like intimacy, like what happens when somebody is alone and how's their bed or the crumbs on the floor or and that is also I think sexy and intimate and beautiful and you feel more company. I think watching looking at the movie, I hope, and looking at the magazine, you feel that you're not so strange.
right. No, you created this sort of like
You don't need to go to the Hotel W to because there's also
right.
like this new aesthetic, like another Airbnb. It's like, come on.
Right, exactly. It's like the sort of like again the lifestyles of the rich and famous by the
Yes.
pool and all this kind of stuff. The authentic sort of intimacy of the everyman is
Mhm.
sort of is really kind of like presented here, which is kind of nice. So all the models seem very accessible. I like that. One of the other things that was really kind of great, which you also echoed in your filmmaking, is the sort of sort of erasing of the surname, so everyone is sort of equal.
Well, but that's their idea. That's their
Yeah, yeah.
idea.
I think I love and I kind of love that as a concept because sort of again it's sort of like of their sort of like aesthetic, it kind of equalizes everybody. So
Yeah,
you
this is
could
like
be
more.
famous, you could
Yeah,
be like the guy sweeping the streets, but everyone's sexy.
exactly. And everybody has a name. So
Right.
even if you're a famous singer or you work as a window wipe,
Yep.
um, you're all going to have the same name. And they really don't talk too much, even in the information of the magazine, what you really do. Maybe Sean works in Phil, but they don't really get into. They want to know something else. And also, their text is very strange the way they write. Paco really writes, but sometimes he writes in first person, then sometimes he writes in the plural. Plural would be the Um, uh, English used to be my language, but sometimes I forget some words. So basically, the models, in a way, trigger memories from them. Some, like, say, let's say, um, Patrick is from London, and they begin to talk about when they once were in London, or why they would like to go to London, or where Patrick, or because of the way Patrick is, they recall other things. So basically, the models also serve as triggering memories
Mhm.
about other people or other times. So it's not like Patrick is this, and he goes to that school and this and that.
So sort of like this sort of diary of almost nostalgia
Yes.
that is sort of like created with these sort of these the photographs of the models, but they're connected in this sort of like personal, almost personal sort of
Mhm.
uh uh to quote Robert Altman's the Three Women, Dear Diary.
Mhm.
um in many
Oh,
ways.
I
But
love
yeah,
that. I haven't seen that movie a long time, but yes,
I really I that always that's always stuck with me, Shelley Duvall being
yeah.
like, Dear Diary. And I also find like a lot of that sort of like that personal sort of connection to the narrative is really what kind of brings people in as well. Um, so to sort of like maybe pick up where we sort of kind of touched about the prologue, the sort of epilogue of it is
Okay,
a different part of the film, because obviously this was produced in the pandemic
it
and
was filmed immediately before. I
yep.
mean, not immediately before. It was filmed in September
Mhm. And
of
then
2019.
so then all the post production sort of happened, a lot of
Yeah,
it.
and we were going to begin to shoot to the post produce in October maybe, or November. But here in Chile, we also had sort of a revolution in a way.
Mhm.
So Chile, which is a very calm country, suddenly it began to burn.
Yep.
So basically, our brain was not ready to make a move, to go into the editing room. And
Right.
then when we were calming down, the pandemic came. So I said, no, we can't now stop, because twice two things can't make us lose the movie.
Right. Right. Right.
And they gather, and the stuff we gathered, and all the talking and with them, and they're very shy.
Hmm.
We tried, of course, I tried them to pose. They said no, even though there's some cameos there. If you look, you find pictures of them,
Hmm.
but they said no, 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 we would never pose. And and yes, and so we began to make it during the pandemic, and once we began to feel that I felt that we had to acknowledge it. I
Hmm.
don't know if it's good or bad, or maybe it's a mistake, but I felt it in that moment. And because I began to realize that, yes, that now there were a lot of people alone in the pandemic. Some were probably nude or not, or whatever, but and if somebody's alone in their room, they could watch TV, they could eat, but they
Hmm.
could also maybe jack off, maybe they could watch porn, maybe they could cry, maybe they could smoke, and um, and many of their pictures looked like they were shot during the pandemic with like a mask,
Right.
because they look very lonely.
Hmm.
So in a way, it's strange that also a sexy movie or beautiful bodies or eyes and everything, in that part of the movie, it looked like a requiem. No, it looked like all these guys were very, very sad, and probably they were not.
No. Well, no,
But
it's strange
putting
because
them together, they look sweet, and you want to, like, you're gonna be okay, or don't come down.
yeah, I mean the photographs that are in this or the end of the movie do
Yeah,
look
we call
very,
them vitamin D, the vitamin D
the
part.
vitamin D part, yes. So the vitamin D
Yeah,
part,
because I saw once a neighbor taking sun, so I thought it was that's where I got the idea.
and that's what they were sort of the CDC here was like sort of talking about too, is like
Mhm,
get your vitamin D because that'll help with the sort of like your immune system.
mhm.
So it really makes sense.
And
But
did you follow the instructions?
I got a little sun, but I
Okay,
definitely started taking vitamin D supplements.
okay. Mhm.
So, which I'm still taking now because
Me too.
it's good. But I have to agree that like it looks like some of the photos that are featured in there and the models that are featured there look like, so kind of like when I was watching I was like, whoa, did they were they still continuing to work in the pandemic, and what does that sort of mean? But again, it sort of captured this sort of like sort of isolation
Mhm.
and the sort of like encapsulation of this sort of moment, which a
Yes,
lot of their photographs have. It's like sort of this sort of like bubble in time kind of
I
quality
like the
to them.
idea that many filmmakers or writers or artists sometimes work ahead of time. I mean, I think especially pop culture, especially now with the pandemic, I mean, the idea of the world ending is something that anybody who has watched movies is like, well, we're sort of know what happens. Like other people are more maybe are more amazed that the world could end. I mean, we known for such a long time in movies and stuff. In a way, they were showing isolation, they were showing loneliness, but also I feel in those pictures, all the guys who are alone, you still feel that they're not gonna crumble.
Right.
And and there's very moving. I think there's like some couples who
Mhm.
like one is sharing a cigarette and or somebody is like hugging another. And I think if that is considered not emotional and not nice or not sweet, I think you have to go see a shrink because to feel that is like seeing there's one of the picture we were like a guy has just we were talking before. There's a picture which was probably taken in 2013.
Mhm.
There's a guy with the sun, and the sun sort of shines on his on his
Yep.
stomach. And I don't feel that picture is it's like a not a nasty. What would you call the word? It's so like a old fashioned nasty or NC-17 or X rated or I
Oh,
think it's
explicit maybe.
explicit, but it's not explicit. I mean, it's
Yeah. It just I mean
I think
seems
it's interesting now that we're going to have to begin to change the way we put names on things. Emma. I mean, I don't think that is a picture that is considered explicit or for adults. So maybe for over 18, okay, but it's not a titillating film.
no, and it's weird though because I feel like a lot of erotic photography gets this sort of like kind of like painting with a brush of pornography, and I
Yes,
feel like what's really captured by their
like for dirty old
photographs.
men in a way.
It's real men, and it's erotic, but it's not pornographic.
Yes.
And it doesn't feel you never feel that the camera is creeping or
Mhm.
menacing or anything like that, but it's merely sort of observing. And then they are
And
true like sort of voyeurs in many ways. And I also feel like the camera your film's camera also had this sort of observer, and it wasn't an obtrusive,
no,
it wasn't menacing at all. It was really kind of observing.
it wasn't what they call POV.
Yes. Yeah, no, it was like fly on the wall
Yeah.
almost. And that's
And also, I have a personal fetish almost. Many of the films I've done on my books, but basically one of my favorite films are the idea, what Paul Schrader says very well. One of the big genres in the world is A Man in His Room. And
yes.
all the problems come out, what he thinks or what he will do. And there you can go from Taxi Driver to almost any movie. And here they basically work when they're inside, it's very A Man in His Room. Yeah?
Hmm.
And outside, as you said, it's very bucolic, and even the places which are a little more run down, they don't give you a vibe that it's like they're gonna sell crack, or something.
Right, right, right. Even like the picture, there's a one picture of like a guy leaning against the dumpster.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't look like it's sexy, but it's not like I'm gonna meet you behind. It doesn't seem
Yes, 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 yeah, yes.
dirty. Like if that makes sense. Like it's not
Absolutely.
like
It's not, and it doesn't have it doesn't have a view. Well, one thing I think it's important also that they consider themselves working class,
Mhm.
so they don't feel the titillation of like let's go slumming,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let's go, let's make Glenn Close into a hillbilly and shoot that. So it's not
Uh,
like it's not the eroticism or just the whatever political stance or whatever to go like say yeah. So the dumpster picture or any picture that has to do more with graffiti, it's not something creepy or look how the working class
right. It's not.
has
It doesn't
fun
seem
or something.
elitist at
Mhm.
all. It doesn't seem
I
elitist
think
at all.
if you see some pictures of New York in the 70s, some pictures are titillating, but some look very fun
Yeah.
and 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 enjoyable, like sunning on the Hudson, and I think also has to do again with what we began to say, the gaze. if you go taking pictures at the piers in the 70s, to get off, you could probably find them, but also it could be also art or a
Right.
celebration of the vitamin D again. It's
And
the
even some
word
like
of,
even some pornography that captured those moments in the 70s also,
of
even though
course,
it's
of course.
pornography, but it was also like a
Have you
celebration.
heard this podcast called Ask
Ask anybody.
Anybody?
Yeah, yeah, we actually showed that there's a film. High five. Uh, we should actually
You're
show
my
the film.
man. You're my man.
We showed Evan's film our last virtual edition, so it's a great film
Oh,
too.
I
And
would
we
love
love
to see
him.
it. And
That's
I know it's very interesting. And actually, it's much more sexy if you have a story, if you like the people, if
yeah,
you feel related, if you know their names, for God's sakes.
yeah, yeah, of course, of course. So I guess my last question for you, and then you can ask me questions if you want.
I'm going to
Turn
ask
the
you for
table.
links. I want to see that movie.
We can talk about that
We can talk
after.
afterwards.
But my last question is, so this is the world premiere, and I
Yes.
know that like you've been working hard on this. Do you have any other projects that are sort of bubbling under that you might want to talk about? Something to look forward to? I know that you have a book or so.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm in the middle of writing books. We're trying to now. I always said this is my last movie because also it takes a lot of energy from books. I mean, and
Mhm.
books are hard to write in a way. Um, I have some ideas more like this. Huh? I think maybe perhaps in movies one could go more a documentary way and not. I'm also with the pandemic. I think maybe fiction.
Mm,
I could be more. I'm more in charge maybe in fiction, writing it, and maybe on in cinema it's more capturing the world. I mean, there's such interesting people outside and stories that have not been told or angles because even what if you look at if you where it says like this movie is about two photographers who take pictures of nude men. This sounds good. I mean,
right.
let's open a bottle of wine and see it. But I hope you don't really get that. I think it's this is portrait of a marriage
Hmm.
because it's also like let's see, not only just don't read the synopsis. I mean, yes, it's true. It's about two photographers who take pictures of nude men, but I think it's much more. And we've been talking about this for a long time now. And I think it's a portrait of above all a couple and how a couple can turn their lust, perhaps is the word, into an art and to a bond. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like we it's funny they say when the the guys who have sex on camera sometimes
Hmm.
they all of them not all of them but many of them end up breaking up as a couple, huh?
Well, so I think it's sometimes like when you get that sort of intimate with somebody, especially having someone watching, it's a lot of pressure to sort of unpack because
Hmm.
then it starts the process of just sort of unpacking
Hmm.
of that. And sometimes relationships work, sometimes they don't. And I have to
Uh-huh.
say that this portrait of Paco and Manolo, it is about a marriage, and it is about a partnership, and it is about
Yes,
artists who are definitely
partnership
failing.
and the real and any all the exceptions of the word.
Yeah. No, it's true. Like I feel like they're
And
like
I
a
think a
complete
lot of
unit.
people would love to. I think it's a great like idea of like maybe one could have a partner like that or one could live a life like that. And
It's totally aspirational. Are you kidding me?
yes, yes, I believe so. I believe so.
For sure.
We have a little like Paco and Manolo. But yes, I think they're even though sometimes they act like Tom and Jerry, at the end it's like, wow, this is the real thing.
Yeah. No, and you can tell that sort of that again, their sort of authenticity and their sort of like their shorthand with each other and also the love that they have for each other.
Mhm,
You really kind of captured some really great moments. I love there's a moment when they're shooting the fireworks
mhm,
where they kind of like nuzzle a little bit. And
mhm.
it's I was like, oh, it kind of it
Good.
elicited that sort of
No,
like
but that is what
but
what I wanted to make you. I mean, I wanted to titillate you and says, come see my movie,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is over. You have to be over 18 and warning, and you're
Yep.
gonna see naked guys, and hopefully your heart breaks.
Yep. Yeah, a little
You
bit.
get
Like my heart,
emotional.
it
I
wasn't
get so
didn't
emotional as
it didn't break. It definitely melted. So,
yeah, okay, better, which is much better, of course. Yeah, we don't really
um,
use that word. That it's better in English.
yeah,
Melt is much better to be
melted.
melted than to break it. Yeah, it's too
Um,
harsh to be broken. Yeah.
but I also like I have to say, like, just to kind of go back to something that you mentioned earlier about this being structured like a thriller. I please make some thrillers.
No, but
And
I would like I want you to see my first one. I mean, not
I
my first one.
well,
Cola de
that's
Mono. Cola de
yeah,
Mono. I would love you to see it.
yeah. I mean, I would love to too. And like anybody who's watching this, like, I love that this is like
Yeah,
part of.
TLA has it. It was. I think it was a little not understood because it was sex and thriller, sex and the scareness. How you say?
Yep. So a little
But also
scary,
it
a little
takes
sexy.
place in the 80s. It's sort of like my take on. I wanted to do an Amblin movie
Yep.
with naked actors because I think all the protagonists of those 80s movies they must have desires
Yep. Of course.
and especially like a movie like Gremlins, you know, it's
Yeah.
so they're so chase, no? So
Yeah. Yeah.
basically,
Exactly.
what would happen if Zach Galligan, you know, was gay and
Right.
would go, huh?
And I think
Or
that like that sort of exploration is really needed. Like I've been trying to convince a lot of our filmmakers that are attending the festival, please make genre films because we're all kind of craving that sort of like that sort of fantasy, also in that fictition and narrative. It's like, you know, a lot of the coming out narratives. And it's like we've seen it, but
and it
like
could also be scarier also. I
yeah,
mean,
like I
the
mean,
the
like
person,
Knife and Heart that came out like as
yes, I
Nicolas
love it. Yes.
Palas, that came out a couple of years ago, easily one of my favorite films of the last decade because just went there,
Mhm.
and it was kind of beautiful. It was a beautiful sort of little capsule of a movie.
Well, one of the things that well, Paco Manolo are big fans, and they're looking. They said they're always going to give me if they find it in a market or something, the poster of Cruising, which is called A la Casa,
Oh yeah.
and that is also a movie that is very interesting to look at it now.
Hmm. It was problematic when it came out, so there
Of
was
course, yes,
they
yeah,
protested it, and I can understand like watching it, I can
yeah.
understand sort of protest, but I really kind of love it because again, it depicted parts of gay life that weren't even talked about.
Mhm.
And William Friedkin was kind of like a genius at like sort of doing that, even with Dog Day Afternoon.
Yes,
Again, another queer portrayal that sort of
and
really went under the radar.
also talking about thrillers, and even in this movie that has a little thriller, um, part of sex also has to do with, I don't know if I'm wrong or maybe I'm kinky, but has to do with adrenaline.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
And if you lose all the adrenaline, I think everything goes away.
Yep.
And the
It
adrenaline has
turns into a
to,
cuddle, which is fine, but
which is fine, but afterwards,
right, exactly. That's the second act.
or the adrenaline has to come out and find the new ways to not because of course adrenaline not only comes from the chase, from looking or from being scared. It can come out from just being having fun.
Right. Right, exactly.
But
It,
without adrenaline, I think it's just something not very human.
right. No, I would agree with that. So any questions for me before we kind of wrap this up?
Why are you choosing movies that are more? You think there's um there's a shyness in certain gay cinema, or you find that less because I noticed that you're very interested and you recommended me at the gathering, like shorts, perhaps shorts are more out there than mainstream films because there is already we know I guess there's this like the bad gay comedy or no for all the family or way which is
Right.
basically like my big fat Greek wedding sort of it has certain aesthetics and colors
Right,
and
right.
even body types is like dude I've seen this a
Well,
thousand
like
times on
something like
airplanes.
Call Me by Your Name, which you know is a perfectly fine film.
Yeah,
I mean, it could the book was so much better, to be honest. But
but
you know,
what's the problem with the pubes what I
right,
say I mean if
exactly,
you're going to do it if not I would not have shot the peach scene if I'm
exactly,
not gonna if I'm not gonna I mean if I'm gonna have the camera like probably you know with a sheets and all the it's like Austin Powers, you know. I mean when you begin to just be aware that you're not going to see anything, you begin to almost laugh. I mean, why there's always a vase in front of, yeah, look, it's a cat.
Oh, that's Jacques. Sorry. The little
No,
making a little
no,
appearance.
join
Making a
us.
little
Maybe,
appearance.
maybe he liked the conversation.
He did. So I mean, one of the reasons why we sort of um, kind of program so many shorts at our festival is because one of the reasons why we do what we do is we want to celebrate and we want to uplift queer filmmaking and queer storytelling. And I find that sometimes features get made all the time, but I always feel like short filmmakers sometimes can discuss a theme
Mhm.
in a small amount of time more effectively than a feature sometimes is, and can kind of have that sort of nimbleness to sort of like talk about a story or an experience in sort of less time than a feature. Like sometimes things don't need to be a feature
Of
length.
course, of course. Yeah, but that's why
um,
they're short stories in literature.
and having so many and like putting together short programs, we get a lot of submissions that sort of like talk about sort of the gay experience and sort of talk about different sort of things in the sort of the
What's your take on gay movies that are not gay? What would they call bromance? Like we were like a movie like Gallipoli or something, or do you
yeah,
think
or like
there's a
taekwondo or
possibility?
yeah,
There's
I
a
mean,
possibility to read movies
oh yeah,
in like
I mean, I
a way Bruce LaBruce does that in a way, like look at this film and let's talk about it afterwards.
yeah, because I mean it's funny, like we're showing Saint Narcisse, which is his new one, which has a little bit of gay sex in it, but it's also very pansexual. There's also some heterosexual sex in it as well. And I think that like sometimes like we get really focused on like more concrete identity, and we kind of miss sometimes the nuance
Mhm.
of things. And I feel like there's ways to look at things with an open mind, and also sort of like a
Well, one of my favorite books is Robin Wood's From Reagan to Vietnam, the Canadian film critic. You know him?
oh, I don't.
Uh, well, he felt that he came out in the 70s as a queer film critic, and there were not that many queer films uh, as the way they are now, or explicit or less explicit, or so he basically began to think on horror films and movies that are don't really know what they are. He's a great critic, Robin Wood.
Awesome. I look forward to
He
reading.
really appreciates, I think, Cruz, and he also likes the movies that don't really know what they're talking about, but they're not even, maybe it's homophobic, maybe they're not, but the film is so amazingly jumbled. uh,
And I think that there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of stuff from the sort of our past, our cinematic past, that isn't necessarily
I
appreciated.
like a movie which is, well, that we're going somewhere else, but I really like a movie called The Fan.
Oh yes, The Fan.
Yes, with Lauren Bacall,
Right. And
which in a way it's much more boundary. How do you say?
it definitely pushes the boundaries, but it's super camp. Like
Super
in
camp also. Yeah, it's two movies. It's like Cruising and Maine.
yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah, it really is. It's like Cruising meets Mame. Exactly.
We
Um,
should, we should.
well, that's like, I mean, same thing with like something like The Eyes of Laura Mars, which
I love the eyes. I love the eyes of Laura
so good.
Mars.
I mean, one
It could
super
have
good
been
movie.
named The Eyes of Sean Mars, perhaps.
Right. It's true, and there's a gay character in it, but I find that the sort of like the
And
portrayal,
she works on a pier,
yeah,
which I don't think is, if maybe it's chance, maybe it's not, but still it turns into the whole, she works on the piers.
right, yeah. I mean, she has her like sort of
And she's a
studio.
photographer like
Yeah,
Paco and Manolo.
no, exactly. It kind of all comes full circle.
I'm going to show you the book later.
Okay. All right. So
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I had a great brunch.
yeah, me too. And I'm so glad that you could.
And it's nice to talk to people who are like have the same DNA. And so thank you so much for choosing the movie.
Exactly. Thank you so much for being part of the festival. Again, audience, if you have not seen Everything at Once, what are you waiting for? It's
What are you
playing
waiting for?
now. The world premiere is playing now from started on the 8th of April, going to the 18th on our Zerb TV platform. Go to www.wickedqueer.org for tickets and more information. Alberto, thank you so much
No,
for
thank
speaking
you.
with me. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
El placer fue mío. Muchísimas gracias.